Bruce Philp is our guest. He's written a book called Consumer Republic, and it's about advertising and branding. It's really about branding and the power of the brand and what happens when a brand goes wrong. Tiger Woods gets in a bit of a mess.
Right.
He's endorsing your car. He's the spokesperson for your car. And the brand is, if Tiger, what is the brand on that? Tiger drives the car, you should because you'll be a better golfer? Or what message?
Well, I think it's questionable whether celebrity endorsement actually has any effect at all. I mean, people do it because it gives you stature, and they do it because it also gives you other promotional opportunities beyond advertising. But otherwise, you're hoping that your product is going to bask in the reflected glow of that athlete's character. And that's where the Tiger Woods situation became a bit complicated.
Right. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
But going to cars in general, how we used to buy cars almost every year or every other year, if you could.
Yeah.
Getting a new car was a huge thing. What's changed?
Well, I think we're less car focused than we were in the 1960s, say, when cars were a fashion business. And Detroit very well knew that. And so replacing a car every 2 years was normal. If you were middle class, it was a way of telling the rest of your neighbors that you were doing okay.
Yeah, you're successful. You got a new Cadillac in the driveway.
Yeah. So they're a good deal less disposable now, and a good deal less different from one another than they used to be. But what's interesting about a car is that it's so public. It's such a powerful statement about what you stand for, and it's and that statement is unavoidable. Even the people who try to not make it still end up making it because it's such a declaration.
Right. So if I drive a Prius, I'm an environmentalist.
That's the statement you're making.
Okay. If I drive a BMW, I know Germans make good cars, and I know they last.
Right.
Expensive to fix, but I know they last.
Yeah.
But the buy less, buy better, be heard scenario that runs through Consumer Republic in the car biz means buy less, buy smaller. It's cooler to buy a Fiat than it is to buy a pickup.
I think in that case, buy less often is what that means. And I use cars a few times in the book because they're so easy to understand, and because the impact of building a car is so significant on the environment, and so significant in our pocketbooks.
Right.
So the question I raise is, what if you bought, if you had to buy a car, what if you bought a great car and you kept it for 10 years rather than 3 or 4? And surely the result of that is that fewer cars will be made in order to meet your transportation needs. And if that's the case, then the guy who's driving the 10-year-old beautifully maintained Toyota might in fact be a greener citizen than the person who just swapped their SUV for a Prius.
Right.
And there's some rather tantalizing data in the book that I quote that argues, and this is very contentious data, that in fact there are some hybrid cars out there which have very green images, but whose impact on the planet from a manufacturing perspective exceeds by orders of magnitude the guy next door with the pickup truck.
Okay, so do you think consumers today, every time they drive into a gas station or buy a car or buy an orange, think, where did this orange come from? How many workers had to go through kind of a slave kind of situation to harvest this orange? Is this good oil, clean oil, or bad oil? Or is this a blood diamond or a good diamond? Do you think people today, consumers, actually visit that?
I don't think they do it as much as they should, and I hope that they do it more. And I think you've identified exactly the point of the car exercise. If you are willing to realize that your behavior as a consumer is connected to the rest of the species and to the rest of the planet, your decisions will change. That Prius didn't appear in your driveway because fairies put it there overnight.
Sure.
It was built by humans.
But the point is, where I spend my money has clout, is the point in this book, for sure. And so, and I have choice to do that. I can buy it or not. I can decide not to buy anything made in China and only buy things made in British Columbia. I can decide to buy something that costs more money and lasts longer, or anything can be made cheaper. Right?
Absolutely.
And fall apart.
Absolutely. If you buy
and that's
junk,
planned.
It is planned. Although the idea of planned obsolescence, which was an invention of Detroit actually in the 1920s, doesn't fully explain why a toaster breaks. Sometimes the toaster breaks because the corporation that sold the toaster believed that we didn't want to pay any more than $29.95 for a toaster. And what I think people easily forget is that the other side of this deal, the corporate world, is highly adaptable. In fact, it exists because it's highly adaptable. So if they smell in our behavior that we want to pay less for a toaster, they're not going to do our thinking for us. They're not going to be our ethicists. They're going to say, okay, well, that toaster can't be $60 anymore. It's got to be 30. How can we get a $30 toaster made? And then the dominoes fall from there.
And it's offshore and all of that. So the pundits who scribble anti-consumerist diatribes, what do you say to them?
I think that you no sooner want to give up your role in this system than you want to give up your vote in a democracy. The people who punch out and say, I'm not going to participate, I'm not buying branded products, I'm not going to give those people my money, are essentially walking away from their responsibility of citizenship.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's what you mean by consumer republic. Yeah. So it's a boycott or a boycott. Yeah. You can boycott it or you can boycott it, and it has power. For instance, Rogers, when they launched like internet, got into the internet world and launched internet. I think the slogan was, "You're not going to miss all this, are you?
Right.
You're not going to be left behind, are you?"
Yeah, and I think it's easy to see that as a manipulation. But you know, from a cable company's point of view, it was a survival tactic. I mean, you have to cast your mind back to the late 90s. The internet is coming. Cable companies all across the country are investing huge amounts of money in laying fiber optic cable so that they can sell us what goes through that cable. And they're doing that all the while hampered by their own dismal reputations. And to the best of my knowledge, to a great extent or a lesser extent, every cable company in the country was not particularly well loved by its,
except
by its
for
customers.
Shaw.
With the possible exception
With
of
the
Shaw.
possible exception of this cable company. So, but taking it beyond that, everything we have comes from somewhere. We know that. Everything we own started out as an idea. We know that. Yeah. So to be a consumer in this republic with clout and power so that we can be heard, what do we need to think about when we purchase something? Buy less? Buy better? What?
Yeah, I think both of those things for sure. I'm not so naive as to believe that we can continue to buy the way we have been and not have an impact on the economy and on the planet.
Right.
So whatever else we do, we are going to have to buy less. And I guess my argument is let's make it count when we do. So to answer your question, when we put our money down in the store, the first thing we have to remember is that act is being monitored very carefully. Corporations are brilliant learning machines. They have all kinds of surveillance mechanisms. They understand very quickly what's working and what isn't. So know that you are a node in this system. You're affecting this system. You're not outside it. You're not insignificant. I think the second thing that people probably need to bear in mind is just that kind of pause, that not only where we ask ourselves, do I need this, but am I prepared to live with the consequences of its existence in the world? You know, the point gets made often, particularly in categories like electronics, where the content of some of the things we buy comes from some pretty troubled places. Are we prepared to face that? And then do we still feel good about putting our money down? And then the third thing is, if we are very happy, or if we are very unhappy, are we willing to stand up and say something? Because it's never been easier to do that. And believe me, particularly now, while this is all very new, corporations are listening quite hard.
So essentially, a brand gives us a place to start discovering a story.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Well, you know, I think that the extent to which we want to engage in this is going to vary with the product we're talking about. We may not feel as excited about where toothpaste came from as we are about where our cars came from. But you know, the book really says, and the reason why I chose the epigraph is that we have to do what we can. We have to start somewhere, and we have to not be so hard on ourselves that we need to be Gandhi in order to make this right. We can just do something right tomorrow.
A little bit at a time.
Exactly.
I still trust the Maytag man.
And you probably should.
Okay. Bruce, Philp event, that's tonight,
yes.
5:15 at UBC Sauder School of Business.
Right.
I thank you.
It's been
nice
a pleasure.
to meet you.
Thank
Ride 'em,
you.
cowboy, as they say.